So for this demonstration I'm using the Summer Florals set, and this is the finished card we're going to make. I'll put that to one side. So just for speed, I've already stamped a greeting onto my card. That allows it to dry and I can do the next stage without waiting. So I've put a couple of layers of stencil tape at the top of this card, and I'm going to do the same at the bottom, which protects the card and just gives me a panel to work on. You can make it as thick or as thin as you want to. So I'm using Distress Oxides. I'm starting with Antique Linen, and that's a little darker than it should be, which means that because I've used Fossilized Amber as well, I thought all the ink was off and it wasn't. So it's coming back to its truer colour now. So I've used Antique Linen as a base like this, and then I'm going to use the leaf from the set and the single leaf, and just choose a green that you like. This is a Memento and this one is called Pistachio, so it's just the green I like, and I'm just creating a pattern really, just stamping all the way along, any which way you like. In actual fact you don't have to go all the way along because the flower is so big it won't, not all of it will show, but I'll go a bit further to make sure that I've covered the area that I need to, and create whatever pattern you want to on this panel. I won't bother with that bit, I know that's going to be hidden with the flower. Next I'm using Funky Foliage stencil, and I'm going on to the Fossilized Amber, and I'm just putting a few dots through just to create a pattern, just a bit of interest on there. There we go, so that's that bit done. Put that to one side, so I've got space here, and then I'm going to just take off the stencil tape like this, and then the next thing to do is just use a Zigmanellian pen, a fine liner, and just go along the edge. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't matter if a bit of white shows, so literally just a wiggly wobbly line. There we go, it's just to create an edge, and obviously do that top or bottom. There's one that has been done top and bottom, so that's my background ready to go. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp some flowers. So I'm going to take that leaf back and I'm going to take that off the block, and I'm using my Press to Impress. Whoops. This will mean that I can do it all in one go. So I'm just putting that leaf into place, and I'm using VersaFine. I'll just pull that down. So what I've just done, there's a hair on there. I've just put that leaf back into place. You should be able to see it now. And I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx. And the reason I'm using this ink pad is when it's dry, it will be waterproof. So since I'm using clean colour pens, which I'm very thankful are back in stock now, so I can use them and demonstrate with them, it means that because the outline's waterproof, I'll get a perfect image. Well, that came out perfectly first time. So I'll put my press to one side, and this is what I'm going to be working on. So I actually want 2 of these leaves, 1 of these and 1 flower. So I'm going to start my colouring, and I'm colouring with the clean colour pens. These are water based, they have a beautifully fine tip, and they can go into the smallest of areas. Obviously here I'm doing a large area. I am using watercolour paper, which means that it stays wet that little bit longer, makes your blending much easier. So what I'm doing is I'm using a dark and a light. I'm using number 24 wine red, the number and name is on the side, and I'm using 200 sugared almond pink, so I'm using the two at the same time. If you didn't want to use the lighter pink, you could pull the darker colour out with a water brush or a wet paint brush, but you'd get a slightly different look to this. This is quite a nice strong look. So this is how I would progress over the whole card. So a bit of colour on, and then just pull the colour out until you get the effect that you want. You can put wet on wet, so if I want it darker, I can put more colour on and pull it out like so. So you would carry on round the whole card. I'm just going to do the centre. So here I just put yellow on, but that's quite dark, quite bright, so I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of the red onto the tip and just change the colour. This is the tip to tip technique, but that will have gone back to its own colour, no contamination. So it's another bonus with these pens. I'm just going to do one of the leaves. Obviously I would carry on round there. So here I'm using number 44 deep green and number 53 yellow green. So I could actually go over the edge because this is going to be cut out. But what I am doing is I'm just putting the colour on and I'm pulling the colour out, so I'm shading. So there's the dark green, there's the lighter green, but by going through the two, I'm creating that shading. Remember, I can put more colour on if I want to while it's still wet and pull it out. And the other thing I can do is the tip to tip, which allows me to add a different colour. So when all my colouring is finished, I want two of these leaves, one of these and one flower. And so I'm going to put those to one side, and that's what I've got here. Now this one, I don't know whether you can see it, I'll hold it up. I've actually used my Wink of Stella brush over the top, and that gives a lovely subtle glitter. But the one I'm going to use today is this one, and I've done it slightly differently. I've cut round the edges, so I've cut with my scissors so that each petal is separate. And how you do this is you use an embossing mat and an embossing tools, and for speed I'm using a really large one. I'm also using a smaller one. So if this was going to be flat, I would colour in those bits, but because with this one I've cut it out, I've managed to cut out the bits between the petals. So I'm just going round so that I've got a mark for the middle bit. Hopefully you can see that. So I just work in a circular movement, and that will raise the outside. I then work in a circular movement on each flower, okay, and this will stretch the paper so you get that dimension. When I've finished, I would just go back in with that one, and the flat leaves will pop up like this. Okay, so quite happy with this one. What I'll do is I'll just put a bit of Wink of Stella just in the middle. Grown up glitter I call this, very subtle. There we go. So that's just giving me a bit of glitter there. So assembling your card. Let's put everything to one side. Here's the card, and what I've done, I've already cheated and put on my leaves so they're in place. This is the thing I take ages over. I fiddle around and where do I want it. Here I've got silicone glue, and I'm just putting this onto the back like this, and be quite generous with it because you want this to dry hard and you want to keep that shape that you've put in with your ball tool, okay, with your embossing. So then we'll just position it where we want it and just push it down in the middle and then allow that to dry. There we go. Quite happy with that. Nice card, quite easy, quite fast.